How's it going, folks? Thank you all for tuning in for this week's episode of Topicality to Reality. This week we have the amazing Jody Kruger from UCLA Law to help guide us with some research. So, Jody, before we start, I had a couple questions for you. First of all,
Sure.
I know you've got a little bit of a debate background, and it's just been interesting through this whole series because we've had folks
How's
from
it
the
going,
East
folks?
Coast. Thank you all for
and
tuning
the
in
Midwest
for
and
this week's
how'd you
episode
get
of
involved with
Topicality to Reality. This
I
week we
got
have
involved.
the
I
amazing Jody
debated
Kruger
for
from
8 years,
UCLA,
4 years in high
UCLA
school
Law.
and 4 years
So,
in college. In high school, I debated in the Midwest. I'd always wanted to debate, and I was very happy. My freshman year of high school was the very first year my school had a squad. And my debate career in high school, we were in a very, very competitive district, and it largely consisted of me getting beaten up on by bigger, badder schools that have been around more. But you know what? I came back for more, and I just loved it. And I debated in college as well, and had some more regular coaching in college, and just loved the activity. Loved the activity so much. Well, I love not just the activity, but I actually am married to my senior year debate partner, my senior year in college debate partner. That's my husband. He's another 8-year debater. And I currently have a son, sophomore in college, who's on the debate team. So it's kind of part of what our family is all about.
yeah, sometimes I try to tell these kids the folks that you meet in debate you'll know forever, but you just see it every time you ask anyone who's a former debater. And then,
It's true.
yeah, and I know for a lot of our students right now in high school, they are in their mind considering law school and practicing law and things like that. But I know that you used to practice, but now you're in a different role. So, what are some of the things that, or how did you make that decision? And
Sure. And I think law is a wonderful career. And I think debate really gives you a terrific background for law. So, any students who are considering law school, keep considering because it's just wonderful. And debate really sets you up well for success in that field. That being said, law was also something else. I'd always wanted to be a lawyer. I became a lawyer and I practiced law for about 11 years. But for me, I kind of reached the point where I wanted to change. And what I liked best about the law was the research aspect of it. And I thought, you know what? I bet I could find a job where I can do that. And I did. I became a law librarian, and I've been a law librarian for 14 years. And I love it. I don't regret my decision to both practice law and to move on to something kind of legal practice adjacent. I've been doing this a while, and now I'm the head of the reference department at the UCLA Law School. And also, I want to make the offer that if any of your students are interested in law school and have questions about that, either now or after they graduate, they're in college. Please put them in touch with me because I'm happy to talk to any and all students who are interested in going down that path.
awesome, we'll definitely take you up on that. So it definitely seems like you could make a career out of becoming a card cutter. So looking forward to some of the tips you've got for us today.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Well, I just want to thank you, Joseph, and the rest of the folks at Lambda for having me participate in this lecture series. And I have some fantastic resources that I cannot wait to share with all the Lambda students out there. And I'm especially excited to talk about research because, much like critical thinking skills and public speaking skills that you get from debate, I think research is another very real world skill that you learn from the debate that'll set you up for future success in any of your future endeavors. It's particularly helpful for high school and college term papers, but also beyond that. So the presentation that I have planned today is going to proceed in 4 parts. Former debater got a signpost. First, we're going to talk about just where to go to research very generally, high level stuff. And then we're going to get in the weeds a little bit with specific resources in those spaces First, learning how to research to find scholarly written works, works written by scholars and other experts in the field. And then third, I should say, we're going to discuss working with government resources because there are some great federal government resources out there. And I know the topic is specific to federal law. And then finally, at the end, I will mention some additional research materials out there and some places to go. This is a huge topic. We don't have time to cover everything, but I have prepared a handout for all the students that identifies and links to all the resources that we'll be discussing today. And also that handout, along with this PowerPoint presentation, I know is available from Lambda. So I encourage the students out there to look at it. I know that Joseph is taking questions through the chat. So please put your questions in the chat. I'm totally happy to hang out after this presentation to answer any and all questions that you have. So without further ado, let's talk about where you're going to be going to do your research. And like I said, this is really, the basics. Most research these days is online anyway. And then in this weird world we're facing for the foreseeable future, pretty much all your research is going to be online. But the great news is there are tremendous online resources for you, a lot via the internet itself. But also remember that subscription resources are available through the Los Angeles Public Library, also known as LAPL, as well as the LA Unified School District, also known as LAUSD. And we're going to talk about some of those subscription resources through LAPL and LAUSD that are going to be particularly helpful for this topic. So first, though, let's talk about the internet. Believe me, we're going to spend a lot of time working with internet resources. But before we even dive in there, I kind of want to clue you into a couple of really good features to help make your internet searches that much better. Within Google, you can Google for Google Advanced Search. The link is also embedded in the PowerPoint and in the handout. And that opens up this screen, which tells you about advanced search options just generally available within Google. One that I use all the time is this one labeled site or domain. What that's particularly useful for is a lot of times in your research, you're going to find websites that have really good content, but you don't know who the hell designed the search interface. They're really hard to explore. You can actually cut and paste the URL for the website in there and then run your search up here. And then you're basically using Google to power the search engine for that website. It's pretty cool. I also want to talk briefly about Wikipedia. Now, I know that students are told not to use Wikipedia, don't cite Wikipedia, Wikipedia is not reliable. And that guidance is 100% correct, but it is also not complete. Wikipedia, as you know, is kind of crowdsourced information, so you don't want to cite it or rely on it for the substance. However, most wiki pages that I use have great footnotes and great links to external references. And that's definitely a great place to get started. So throughout this presentation, we're going to be focusing on the search for police body cameras used in law enforcement. So I pulled up the Wikipedia page and took a screenshot of the top part of the entry for police body cameras. Now, in looking at the table of contents, one thing jumped out at me, this thing number 4, impact studies. I know in debate, studies are cited in, so many debate rounds, they're pretty common. And there's, you have to weigh studies, whose studies are better. And that comes up in a lot. So let's look at impact studies. This is the beginning of the portion on impact studies. And if we look here, this tells us that there was a very recent study, and at least according to Wikipedia, it's pretty darn comprehensive. So I would want to know what that is. And look, it's cited at footnote 110. At footnote 110, it cites here to this study, which is published in the Journal of Criminology and Public Policy. That's considered, by the way, a scholarly bit of writing that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And it even gives a link to that. So that's pretty cool. And that's how you can use the footnotes in Wikipedia to get great information. Also, if you scroll down to the bottom of any Wikipedia entry, you'll see external links. For this one, honestly, they're not very exciting. It gets you to one New York Times article, but sometimes they're really good. So that's Wikipedia. Let's talk a little bit about the Los Angeles Public Library, or LAPL. I encourage anyone who does not yet have a LAPL library e-card to get one. What that is you just register with LAPL for an e-card, and that gives you access to that gives you access to the bulk of their online databases and all the ones that we're going to discuss today. It also gives you access to ebooks and other resources. It's pretty cool. You go to the website. I've linked to it here. It's also linked to in the handout. You click on Get a Library Card. It opens up this interface. It gives you instructions. Then it downloads this thing that gives you more information. And then you fill out the form, and you're pretty much good to go in a matter of seconds. Literally, I think I signed up, and like 40 seconds later, I was researching an LAPL. It's pretty cool. There are also databases available to you through the LA Unified School District, and the link is there. So we're going to talk about what you see up here in a little bit. But right now, remember that you still have to get remote access to all their databases since you're not on the actual campus. There's a link right here to an instruction page on how to get access remotely. As somebody, I myself often have technological challenges. So I think the most important piece of it walks you through step by step. I'm hoping that you're familiar with the systems and you understand how to set it up. But if you don't, on page 2, there's this nice little paragraph on how do I get support, and it tells you where you can call and gives you links to click on for live chat. So that's how you can set up remote access to LA Unified databases. So that is kind of the big picture of where you're going to be looking. But let's talk about what resources you're going to be looking for. So first and foremost, you're going to be looking for academic writing. That's writing written by professors and other scholars in the field, often, most often in scholarly journals. Also, we're going to look at government materials and resources, and this is where we're going to spend the bulk of the rest of their time. But there are other great resources that I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of, and that's what you see in that more category, and we'll take a look at all of those. Before we dive into finding legal writing, though, I wanted to talk a little bit about legal writing in particular, because law review literature is going to be something I think you're going to be using a lot of on this topic. And there's a lot of things that people who aren't in law school don't really know about law review literature. A couple of, little tricks, if you will. First and foremost, I want to talk about the difference between law reviews and bar journals. The paper that was put together on the resolution was shared with me, and the last several pages I noticed of that document had reference to journal articles and books, so I encourage you to look at it. I noticed in the journal articles they were using law reviews and bar journals interchangeably, but that's not really correct. Law reviews are scholarly writing that typically professors and other experts will spend, a year, give or take, of their life researching. Then they submit it to a journal, and it goes through an editorial process, and then it's finally published. A lot goes into law review articles, and they're considered pretty authoritative. Bar journals is like the popular press of the law world. They're glossy magazines that come out once a month. They're written, often the articles are written by experts in the field. Sometimes they're written by attorneys who dabble in particular areas and are trying to generate business. They're a little all over the place. So if you're in a debate round and you're citing a law review article and your opponent's citing a bar journal, you want to bring that to the attention of your judge. I also, though, want to talk about who's writing law review articles. I said professors are writing law review articles, and that's right here in articles. However, there's a whole nother population of people who write materials for a law reviews,
generate
and that
business.
is law
They're a
students.
little all over the place.
Law reviews.
So if you're in a debate round and
generally
you're
are
citing a law
edited by
review
law
article and your opponent's
students,
citing a bar
and
journal,
law students who work on law reviews are actually invited to write their own articles and submit them to the law review, who will publish them. So very often the student writing is referred to as a note or a comment. And very often professors and other experts write articles. However, not always. I've seen professors' works identified as a note or comment. I've also seen student works called articles. So what that means is when you find a law review article, and really any work of scholarly writing, you want to look at typically the very first footnote or something that comes underneath the names to identify who is writing this thing. Because remember, a student-written law review note or comment does not carry the same weight as a professor-written article. And that's something else, if you're weighing evidence for a debate judge, you definitely want to point out. So with that out of the way, let's talk about finding academic articles. So there are many places you can go to find academic articles, and this slide is kind of a cheat where I've listed everything on one page. Not everything, but everything we're going to discuss today. So on the internet, you definitely want to look at Google Scholar, which we're going to look at in a minute. We're not going to look at journal websites, but I do want to let you know that almost all law reviews and many, many, many other scholarly journals all have websites that do have archives available in full text of some, if not all, of the articles for the last several years. So it is always worth going to the website of a journal if you have a citation that you're interested in, or there's a particular journal in the field that you're interested in, and see what is available in full text, for free right there. Google Scholar is another great tool, which we'll discuss. Los Angeles Public Library has two databases that I think are going to be very helpful for you guys when you're looking for that scholarly writing. And that is Hein Online Public Library and ProQuest Central. We'll talk about both of those. And then LA Unified has many additional databases. They have Central Student, which is the same as ProQuest Central. So like whatever resource you're more comfortable using, you can use it there. Those are pretty interchangeable. Then you've got some EBSCO stuff, and then a couple of other databases. And hopefully we'll have time to talk about all of these. But let's first talk about Google Scholar. Google Scholar is great for two things. First, searching. Searching in Google Scholar is great. It's also good for finding the full text when you have a citation. We're going to talk about both of those along with some additional tricks. So if you were to search in Google Scholar, you would see it's a little grayed out. You get the big old search box, and it's perfectly fine to plug your search into the big old search box. I do that all the time. But what I want you to know that Google also has this little menu icon in the upper left. If you click on that, that almost always opens up advanced search features. So the advanced search features are nice because you can do things like it kind of tells you, if you want an exact phrase, that's helpful. You can also always put your search in quotation marks, and that typically will search it as a phrase. You can also date restrict your search, because I know in debate, kind of recency is key. You're probably not interested in older literature. So this was just a sample search I've done for police body camera. Not the world's greatest search. You would also want to search law enforcement. Also, I think the correct term of art is body worn cameras. But, it's a search that gets the job done, at least as a first pass. And then here I limited the dates to from 2017 to the present. So when you do that, you see you get all sorts of search results, and some of them look good. You can click through either here or here. This is very clear that it is free and it's going to be available. This tells you that it's available on Hein Online. If the link doesn't work for you, remember that Hein Online is available through the Los Angeles Public Library. but it also might be available for free at the journal's website. So remember, this is giving you some links, but it's not giving you necessarily all of the links to find the full text. And you also have options to refine your search at the left, and you can do that too. So that's searching in Google Scholar. You can also use Google Scholar to find the full text of articles from a citation. So remember, I mentioned that footnote 10. You can see it down here at the bottom of the screen. That was that footnote article cited in footnote 10, the study, footnote 110 in the Wikipedia entry for body cameras. So that's the article right here. If you were to use Google Scholar to find that article, you could just type in a phrase from the title of the article into the big search box like I did here. You get the article and it comes up, and then it gives you a link here to Wiley. I didn't do a screenshot, but if you click on that, Wiley wants you to pay about $20 to buy the article. Don't spend money on articles. Don't do it. You don't have to do it. The full text is findable in many ways. One way you can find it, and this was kind of cool, I noticed this link here to all 4 versions. So I clicked on all 4 versions and I thought, is the full text available from a different version? Well, what I saw was there's this version here that also has a link here. And I was like, oh, PDF ResearchGate. ResearchGate is kind of a weird, like, public depository that people load stuff in. It's super hit and miss, but sometimes you hit with that. So I clicked on that link to ResearchGate, and sure enough, the full text was available there from the journal itself. And by the way, I thought this article looked good. That link is actually embedded in the PowerPoint. So if you want to read the article, you've got the PowerPoint, the link's embedded right there into ResearchGate, from ResearchGate. So that's pretty cool. I should also mention, before we go on to discussing this slide, one thing I also noticed as I was preparing this presentation is it isn't always fully consistent whether or not things are going to be available in full text or not. So for example, here's that article again, and here you see that Wiley link. This article, Wiley wanted to charge me, I think, $18 for. Another search result I got that I was playing around with was also from Wiley, and that was freely available online. So don't say, oh, well, the librarian said Wiley's wants to charge me money, because sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. It's a complicated thing because a lot of authors insist on public access. So sometimes the other article happened to be actually an article from the same Journal of Criminology and Public Policy that was freely available in Wiley. Certain articles, even in the same issue of the same journal, are public access and some are not. So always click through the link and see what's there, and then double check at the website, and then double check through the subscription resources. By the way, too, if you have a citation that you are just not finding and you really want to see that material, let your coaches or let the folks at LAMDL know. They'll help guide you through how to find it. And if they can't, then they'll get in touch with me, and I'm happy to help you find materials too. So don't pay for articles, but do let your coaches and LAMDL know if you just can't find an article, because help is available. But getting back to Google Scholar though, another super cool feature of Google Scholar, which by the way, I just clued a law professor into this a month ago, and it changed her life. So you don't have to wait to become a law professor to learn this, is that when you pull something up in Google Scholar, in addition to the all 4 versions, notice you've got other options down here. Related articles is kind of cool. But what I really like is this cited by, and then it tells you this particular study has been cited by 93 other articles that Google Scholar has determined. That is really cool because obviously maybe you want to find more recent studies. Maybe your opponents are getting a lot of mileage out of the study and you want to find something that cites to it and discredits it. This is a really nice, easy way to find things that have built upon a prior article that looks good to you. So if you really like this article or you really didn't like your opponent citing it, you could click on this cited by 93, and here you get the Google Scholar list with links to all the articles that cite that article. So it's pretty darn cool. So let's move on to databases in LAPL, Los Angeles Public Library, because I mentioned that they have a lot of good databases. So before we move on to that, however, I kind of want to point out that I think LAPL does a not great job of making their databases front and center. So I've outlined the path for you so that you don't have to do that. If you go to lapl.org, which should be the main website for the LAPL, this is what you see. And then it says you have to click on another link to get to the full website. See that? So you click on the other link to the full website. Once you get to the full website, and there's a screenshot down here, you then have to expand the menu for collections and resources. And it wouldn't let me even do that, like get a good screenshot of that. And then when you expand the menu for collections and resources, you then click on research and homework. And that's where the databases are hiding. I've actually given you the link to that page in the handout, but if you don't have the handout in front of you, you forget the link or something's misbehaving, you have the path written right here. Because honestly, between you and me, I find it frustrating. I don't know how others are supposed to find this stuff. So here it is. By the way, the screenshot notice, if you're searching inside LAPL, that's great. You have 217 databases available, but presumably you're going to be working remotely. You would want to click this button for home, office, or other. That gets you about 180 databases and change. Yeah, there are about 40 databases that are only available if you're actually at the library. So, but you have this great A to Z link here, A to Z menu right here. And if you know the database you want, you can click right there. That's why I've given you the names of the databases. Remember, Hein Online is at the H and ProQuest Central is at the P. You can also explore by topic up here. So if we were to go to Hein, by the way, and if you had a library card, you'd click through all the protocols and you'd get into Hein Online Public Library. Hein Online, by the way, it's a database that is used near constantly in law schools. It is one of the leading databases for law review literature. The reason being is has pretty much all of the law reviews, both United States, and it also has a pretty good international collection of law reviews going back from issue 1 through the close to through the present. I think some of the most recent stuff often gets embargoed. And then it's all in PDF. It's really cool. You can run your searches up here, but you can also go to Law Journal Library here. And honestly, that's what I would encourage you to use. And that's what you're going to use most often, Law Journal Library. I've also put a big red arrow next to the Brennan Center for Justice publications, because that's another library within Hein Online that has great materials related to this topic. The Brennan Center is an interest group that works in this space. We'll talk about interest groups later, but the Brennan Center is also one of those websites that is horrible to search, but Hein Online conveniently has the literature for you. But if you were to use Hein Online to look for law journal literature, this is what you would do. You would click on the Law Journal Library. By the way, I didn't do a screenshot, but if you had a citation to a law journal, you could click on citation and just plug the citation in there and you'd get the article. So that's pretty cool. But if you wanted to search, the search engine at Hein Online is a little different than others, and it's not the most intuitive or user-friendly. But I ran a search here for text for the phrase body cameras, and notice I put it in quotations. That's because I wanted to search it as a phrase. Now, by the way, I'm not in love with the search because it's not a great search, because you can just have the word cameras or body worn cameras. It's not a great search. It gets the job done for our purposes today, but you might want to refine that when you're working. And I just did police. Again, I did police, not law enforcement, but it gets the job done. You have options here. I did it within the text, but if you didn't wanted to it more narrow, you could. And also note here, you have some operators. You have and, or, and then within like 5 and within 25. So the search I've crafted here is body cameras as a phrase that appears within 25 words of the word police. I also date restricted to 2015 to 2020. If you, by the way, wanted to not worry about comments and notes, you could actually get rid of that right there. The reason I don't typically do that, even though it does get me a lot of student written work, is because there are professors who do write comments and notes. Typically, they're kind of shorter pieces that they want to get out more quickly, but I actually like the professor written comments and notes. So as much as you have to be on the lookout for student written writing, I don't recommend filtering it out in your first search. So if we ran that search, we would get a lot of results, 849. But we would also get the full text of everything pretty easy. It also tells you the page and the snippets where it's found. So it's pretty easy to navigate once you're here. So, and by the way, notice that this is sorted by relevance. That's typically the default sort. But if you were just like, I really want to see the most recent stuff, you could change that sort to be sort by newest first. So let's say we were to pull up an article of our search results. Hein Online, its interface, even when you have an article up, isn't super intuitive. You navigate page by page using these arrows right here. But what you probably want to do more often than not is download the full article and read the full download, because it's painful to go page by page. You do that by clicking on this PDF button here in the upper left. And I'm showing this to you right now because you wouldn't believe the quantity of law students who are like, I like the content in Hein Online, but I hate reading there. And it's so terrible that they don't let you download articles. And then I cry, and then I tell them, show them that button. So now you know that button. So that is Hein Online. Let's talk about ProQuest Central. Like I said, ProQuest Central is available through the Los Angeles Public Library, but also through LA Unified, and it is pretty cool. And it's also very user-friendly. So I ran a search here for body cameras, in quotations as a phrase, and police. Notice the field here, I picked anywhere except full text. I did that for a number of reasons. Number one, not all materials in ProQuest Central are going to be available in full text. So a lot are, not everything. Also, I like to search not full text in a very large database, which ProQuest Central is, because you're searching key terms as determined by an editor. When you do full text searching, you often get an overwhelming number of search results. But when you're searching keywords such as title terms or key terms as assigned by an editor, you get a more manageable number of results, and your results tend to be more relevant. There is a time and a place for full text searching, but I think you'll be getting good results even if you don't rely on it. But if you do want to play around with other options for searching, you do that right here. I also limited my date to 2015 to the present, and let's see what we get. We get a lot of results, 7,000 and change. But notice the breakdown of the results. Only 51 are scholarly journals, and I would probably want to focus on those first. You also, if you were looking for news, and we're going to talk briefly about news at the end of this presentation, news is included in ProQuest Central, and you can see there's a whole lot of news there. You probably don't want to go through nearly 4,000 results, but you would know that this is a good place to start, and you can refine your search. So if you were looking at the 51 articles, you could click, if you only wanted the scholarly journals, you could click there and you'd get the list of those. And you notice some are in full text, like this second one. Some are not in full text, but again, help is available to find the full text of articles when you have the citation. So these are our the beginnings of our 51 results. And this kind of tells you what you see from the main screen. And whenever you see this text in blue, that's kind of a live link to more information, including possibly the full text. Also, if you just wanted to go directly to the full text, you could do that when it's available down here, full text PDF. So that is ProQuest Central, which is available at LA Unified along with other databases. So remember I said that we would check out those other databases. So if you are in the LA Unified School District database site, you find the subscription databases first by going here. There is also EBSCO Discovery down here, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But you start here with subscription sites. When you do, you see lots and lots of databases, and there might be lots and lots of databases that are useful on this topic. I've kind of put arrows next to some of them and also identified them in the handout. You've got ProQuest Central Student, which we just discussed. You have EBSCO Publishing, which is a competitor to ProQuest. They have, it's another big bad database with lots and lots of great materials, news and scholarly works. And it has some overlap with the materials that are in ProQuest, but not complete overlap. So it's worth going to both. However, I'm going to give you a caveat. As of the time we test drove these databases from the LA Unified website, the EBSCO resources weren't working. Hopefully they'll be working for you in the future, but they weren't working as of 2 days ago. But hopefully that'll get fixed. There's another ProQuest database that I think is useful for you guys called eLibrary. What that is it takes selected resources that are in the ProQuest universe, very selected, very curated, and creates these topic pages and kind of gives you the leading resources on that. So it's definitely worth checking out, particularly as your first pass for any topic. There is another database. If you go further down the list, these GALE databases. GALE databases tends to be scholarly literature. It is a very good place to go for high-level scholarly literature. So I recommend you check that out. And then finally, there's SIRS Issues Researcher. It's another ProQuest database that gives you topical pages with curated materials. It's a little different from that eLibrary that I showed you, and you should check it out. So remember I said there was also from the LA Unified Home District the LA Unified homepage for databases. They also had something called EBSCO Discovery. When it works, and it wasn't working as of 2 days ago, EBSCO Discovery might be a very cool resource for you because it provides what's called federated searching. It searches across it searches basically across databases. And I believe the intent is that it searches across all the LA Unified databases. So that can be a really powerful research tool that I'm very sad I didn't get to test drive for you. But do check it out, and hopefully it'll be available in the future. But let's look at a couple of screenshots of the resources that are available. So as I mentioned, there is eLibrary. eLibrary is the ProQuest database of topical pages. And it's pretty cool. Sorry, I'm trying to keep a clock here so I don't take up too much of your time, and everything just fell off my desk. So eLibrary is a ProQuest database, and you can see right here, just from the homepage, trending topics includes things like death penalty, police reform, defunding. If you click through to some of those pages, you'll see a curated list of great resources. In this case, we ran a search for body camera to see what was there. And you can see right here, you get newspapers, scholarly journals. Now, when we ran our search before, we had 51 scholarly journals. Here we have 27. So it might be a more manageable list. And if you click through here, you get a list of that results. GALE database, as I mentioned, is another great database for scholarly works. And so this is what the homepage looks like. The search button here is a little bit hidden. You have to know that you're looking for cross search. And what that does is that searches across all these GALE databases. So that's pretty cool. And when you search using cross search, you've got two options: power search or literature. For debate, because you're not researching literary databases, you want to use power search. And here we ran a search again for body camera. And you can see we're seeing a lot of results, 181 results. So that's more results than ProQuest gave us. And a lot of these materials are things that we didn't see in ProQuest. GALE, EBSCO, and ProQuest kind of compete with each other and have the same type of stuff. GALE kind of has a more unique materials are contained in GALE. So definitely a good place to look to get something that others might be overlooking. And then if you are in your list of 181, they have additional filters available at the right of your screen. One nice filter is by subject. You can be like, I don't really want to go through 181, but maybe you want to look at these subjects and you want to say, oh, let's police officers or video evidence, so you can kind of narrow by subject and get a smaller subset. So that is GALE. SRIS Issues Researcher is that another LA Unified School District database for scholarly works. And it's also ProQuest, and they have their own curated pages that is a little bit different from ProQuest. So note here, again, this is just the homepage, and already you have things like police brutality, and then if you scroll down, you have more. So that is scholarly works in, how to find scholarly literature in about 20, 25 minutes. So in the time that we have left, I would like to talk about government resources and other materials. So again, this is government materials are a very rich source of information, particularly on this debate topic, but also on lots and lots of research topics that the future holds for you. So this is another kind of cheat sheet slide that I put everything into one slide. So these are kind of like, I think the top 7 resources, but there are many, many others out there. And depending on how you're coming at the topic, these might not be the top 7, but these are 7 really good resources. And I wanted to go through each of them with you. Statistical information is something I imagine you're interested in, and the Bureau of Justice Statistics really does kind of set the standard for statistical information in this area, and then the Sentencing Commission has some other information. And then there are government reports that are both prepared by the government and maintained by the government, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. So, Bureau of Justice Statistics. This is what the homepage looks like. And I put red arrows all over this because there are so many different ways you can explore the Bureau of Justice Statistics website. And if this whole hour was devoted to Bureau of Justice Statistics, we could probably, get through a lot of these, but we don't have that kind of time. But I do encourage you to explore this on your own because depending on how you come at things, you do sometimes see different things. So it's worth coming at things if you want this data in a couple of different key areas. The other thing I'm going to tell you right now is when you are at a website like Bureau of Justice Statistics, you're looking for their summary reports and you're looking for the kind of bite-sized data sets that they're including with those summary reports. One place you don't want to go until you are getting a PhD in data science is the data analysis tool. No joke. In my library, we have 2 data scientists. You're looking for their summary reports, and they're the ones who work with the data analysis tools. I've been doing this a very long time, and it's completely beyond me. So just letting you know that that's why there's no arrow there. But notice that Bureau of Justice Statistics does a great job in reporting on its own data and giving you kind of bite-sized nuggets of data. So that's Key Statistics is great for that, as well as publications and products. And then the other arrows are different ways to come at it. Topics is also really good. But let's just say we were going to enter a keyword and we were going to enter the keyword body camera, because we just want to see, let's just get an overview of what's here. Notice we enter body camera and we get 282 results. And if we are looking, we see, wow, there's some really good stuff here, some really good data sets, some really recent stuff. So that's wonderful. And you would want to explore those. And again, these are all live links when you're in the database. One thing that might surprise you when you're in BJS is that some of the data may not seem super recent to you. Like you might pull up a report that's, from 2020 and it's relying on data from 2017. That's because BJS takes in so much data that it can't possibly write reports on the data in real time as it comes out. So just so you know that it's the database and it's the data, it's not you. The U.S. Sentencing Commission also has some great data, and I also know that sentencing is one of the subtopics within your broader topic of criminal justice reform. So this is definitely a resource you want to know about, and you can find the stuff by looking at research or by topic. So if you look at, this is the research menu, you'll see even here, though, you can explore by topic, and if you scroll down, you even have more topics to look at. If you search by topic, you get to see all their topics and you can scroll down for more. So that's where you go for data. However, the US government also maintains a lot of reports and writes a lot of its own reports. And I want to talk about some resources for where to go to that for those. So this is the National Institute of Justice. So the National Institute of Justice is the research and evaluation group within the U.S. Department of Justice. And their website includes their research and evaluation and so much more. It is a tremendously powerful website with a tremendous source of information on this topic. You can run a search here in their box right up here, or you can explore their topics right here. So if we ran a search for body cameras, we would see that we would get some great looking results, over 10,000. Again, these are not great searches I'm running, but you can get a sense of what's out there. You'd probably want to look at the first few search results, get a sense of what's out there, and then refine your search. And then also throw in some of the things that, you're putting into your, your AF and NEG. But great information. We can also explore topics. And if we were to, so hold on. So that's how you do it. You can explore topics too as well. There is another resource that's contained within the National Institute of Justice, but don't try finding it from their webpage because it's too confusing. I've given you the link for this in the handout. It's called Crime Solutions. Crime Solutions is really stinking cool for debate. Man, I wish I wish I had this available to me when I was debating. What Crime Solutions does is the National Institute of Justice maintains a library of basically studies that have been had on products and services and other things involving law enforcement. Crime Solutions is that library of all those studies. So again, when you're in a debate round and you're trying to, argue, your studies are better than someone else's studies, it can be really interesting to pull the study up through Crime Solutions and see what they have to say about it. It's also a great way to find those studies in the first part. So again, you can search by topic or by running a search. So if we were to run a search for body cameras, we would get 19 results. So they have 19 studies in their library involving body cameras. This one kind of piqued my interest. Police worn cameras. This is a study of Washington, D.C. I liked it because it was very recent. So let's take a look at the record for that. So if we were to look at the record for that, you don't see a lot on the home page, but you have all these menus that you can expand. So let's first see what happens if we expand this bottom menu, evidence-based studies reviewed and additional references. If we expand that menu, we get a link to the study itself. And that's a link to the full text of the study. So that's really, really cool. So that makes it really easy. We can get the study, we can pull the study, you can cut the study and create evidence from the study. It also gives you these additional references. Some have links to the full text, some it just gives you the citation, but by now you know that you can get the full text from the citation, and your coaches, Lambdal and I, can help you with that. So that's the bottom 2 bits of the homepage. But let's go back to the homepage and talk a little bit about the stuff that we're not quite expanding right now. If you start reading studies, you will learn pretty quickly that they are written in language that isn't always easy to understand. They're written by, people who have PhDs in this topic, who have made it their life's work, and it's not easy for civilians such as myself to understand. So what is really nice about Crime Solutions is it gives you summary information. First and foremost, it gives you this like little flag thing up top that kind of tells you in like 2 words what the result is. Well, 4 words. No effects, one study. This kind of is cluing you in. It's one small study and it's showing, this study shows that there's no effect, and it even gives you this little, box here. So that's pretty cool. You'll see other boxes that have like check marks with plus signs that show, oh, there was a really great effect. This one, it didn't find much, but that's actually pretty good to know because that can frame, your approach and can also let you decide how much time you want to spend on that particular study. You can also expand all these menus that, again, give you kind of bite-sized, easy to understand information relating to the study. So that's Crime Solutions. This source really excites me. There are other government sources, so let's briefly talk about those. I know we're running a little long on time, so I'll try to get through this quick. But another great database is the National Criminal Justice Reference Service. With the National Criminal Justice Reference Service, it's another service within the United States Department of Justice that brings together research related to criminal justice and criminal justice reform. And I think it's a great research for the topic, great resource for the topic. You have the option of going directly to the library. You can run a search at their homepage. You can also browse by topic. If we were to browse by topic, you'd see so many topics. You can go straight to body-worn cameras. It wants you to go to law enforcement equipment and facilities. If you did that, this is what you'd see. But notice you have the option to search within the topic, which is pretty cool. So if you then search for body camera, you would get this list of results. Similarly, sorry, I thought I did a screenshot. By the way, yeah. So similarly, I've ran a couple of other searches and I got pretty much the same results. Oh yeah, here. So if you go to their library, you can see this is where I went to their library. It lets you search the abstracts. It also gives you, by the way, remember I said there's lots of places to go for government information. This is a nice collection of links to other places to go. But you can also run a search in the abstracts there. And if you did, you'll notice you kind of got comparable results. I did a search here for body cameras using the library. So a final government resource that I want to discuss is Congressional Research Service. We're leaving the world of the Department of Justice and all their wonderful resources and going and leaving the world, by the way, of the executive branch, because government agencies, which are very active in this field, are part of the executive branch. We're now going back to the congressional branch and Congressional Research Services. What Congressional Research Services is it's the research arm of the United States Congress. These folks write reports that are used by our representatives and our senators when making policy. The reports are a tremendous resource for debate, for term papers, for our Congress people. And also they are considered very, very reliable. And, if anyone questions the reliability in a debate round, I think you can tell them if it's good enough for our senators, it's good enough for a debate judge. So the reports are publicly available, which is pretty cool. At Congressional Research Services, you have the link in the handout. If you go to their website, you will see there's not a lot of different options for searching, but it's okay because it gets the job done. They have a big box that you can type your search in. You can also browse just by clicking the search button without entering anything in. Here I entered in a search for body cameras. You can see there aren't a ton of reports, but it's okay because what's there is pretty good. And you can see that there are 9 reports here. We're not going to have a chance to look at them, but I kind of put arrows next to a couple of ones that jumped out at me. This one is, what role might the federal government play in law enforcement reform? I imagine on this topic, there's going to be a lot of discussion between, the topic relates to the federal government, but, states could do it too. There's going to be states counterplans, right? Well, this report kind of talks about why it's important to have the federal government involved. So that's something you might want to check out and look how recent it was. June 2020. This one also looked really good to me too, because again, it kind of is laser-like focused on a federal law that is discussed at that report. And, but all of it might be good. And I encourage you to check it out. That is Congressional Research, CRS, Congressional Research Services. Finally, before we leave the world of government information, I just want to talk about Google Advanced Search. Remember, I showed you Google Advanced at the beginning of this presentation. Google Advanced is a really cool resource to find even more government information. The reason is the United States government puts out a tremendous amount of information, and to be honest, it's really hard to search across it. But one trick you can have is through Google Advanced. Remember that feature you can search site or domain? Almost all federal government websites end with .gov. And by the way, many state websites end with .gov too. So if you put the domain of .gov in here, you are searching US federal government websites and the websites of many, if not most, of the US states. And then you just plug your search in. So here's bodycamera.gov, and you get lots of results, which I didn't even screenshot because there are too many. You'd want to run a better search than the one I ran. So leaving the world of government information, let's talk about other resources. First and foremost, remember that there are a lot of organizations and interest groups that are very active in the space of criminal justice reform. And a lot of those organizations and interest groups put great materials out on their websites. I've given you a sampling here of various organizations. We don't have time to discuss them, but I do encourage you to check them out. The one I do want to discuss a little bit is the National Conference of State Legislators. What that is it is a website devoted to what's going on in states. All states participate in this organization and have a presence in this organization. And this organization compiles a lot of state-specific research in one place. Again, I imagine states' counterplans are going to be huge. And the National Conference of State Legislatures website is going to be a great research resource for you, as well as these others, and then probably even more. News, you're going to want to search news. Your current events are going to be big. Google News is a great way to do it. Remember also ProQuest Central, which we discussed, is available to you through LAPL and LAUSD, and they've got great news resources. Something else that I think is really cool is the Los Angeles Public Library allows library patrons with your e-card to create a personal account for the New York Times Digital. You have to click on create account from this link. So here's the link, create account. You have to use your personal email address, but that'll get you a subscription to the digital New York Times. And then you can also go to news websites. Every news website is different in terms of what's available. For example, I think the LA Times caps the amount of articles you can read in a given month, but they all allow some access. Very briefly, if you're searching in Google News, you can go to Google News directly, or you can just use the big Google search box. I actually like doing the big Google search box for news, and I'll show you why. So this is the big Google search box. I typed in body cameras, law enforcement. I got many results, but I used the tabs up here to select news. Once I used the tabs to select news, I was given this option of tools that are specific to news. And you can use those tools to sort. So for example, if you're really only interested in what's happened this week, you can set a custom range for just what happens this week, and it'll still sort it by relevance according to Google. Their relevance algorithm is pretty good, but it will just give you that range. So, play around with that. You can also go directly to Google News, and it's good. Another resource I want to discuss, I promise you we're almost done, I know we're running long, is blogs, specifically law blogs, or what the cool kids in law like to call blogs. Blogs, you know what blogs are. I don't have to tell you what blogs are. You probably wonder why this librarian lady is talking to you about blogs. The reason is law blogs, while they vary in quality, there are some really, really good, smart, reliable, reputable people who write law blogs. Law professors in particular love to blog. The reason is, as I mentioned, law review articles take a year, give or take, before they go from idea to being published. Blogs take literally minutes. So it is a way for law professors to get their thoughts and ideas out there quickly. In addition to professors, there are lots of other really good, reliable people who write blogs. So I don't think you necessarily need to shy away from blogs. I think you actually should embrace them in your research, although your coaches might feel different. But you have to pay attention to who's writing the blog. There is this great search engine for law blogs in particular called Justia. You have the link in the handout, and you can search across all the law blogs within the Justia universe. They have hundreds, and you can run your search and get results. You can also search by category. What this is it kind of gives you different topics, and it tells you how many blogs in their universe they have that are specific to that topic. Honestly, I don't love this, but I do like this. So if you were to search for body camera law enforcement in the big Justia search engine box, you'd see it gets lots of results. And the very first result here tells you that this is a professor in the Department of Criminal Justice. So again, when you pull blogs, and I do encourage you to look at them, you definitely need to pay attention, though, to who the author is. Is the author a professor at a university? Or is the author, Joe, who we don't know anything about Joe? Don't cite Joe. Nobody cares about Joe. But the professor stuff is pretty cool, and there's a lot of good, reliable stuff happening in the blogosphere. Finally, I wouldn't be a librarian if I didn't mention books exist. Books are great. Books are wonderful. Unfortunately, print books are hard to come by these days because I don't think the libraries are open. But do know that the LAPL catalog includes ebooks. Also know that there are actually pretty good book previews available from Google Books and from Amazon. I actually rely on it quite a bit myself, particularly in this day and age when print is so hard to come by. So for example, if you were to run a search in Google Books for books, body camera law enforcement, you would see that, oh my goodness, this great book was just published in 2020. It'd be nice to look at it. You're not going to be able to look at the full book, sorry, but it does have a preview available. And if you were to click on the preview, you would see that you get 42 pages of the book. Well, the book is only 183 pages, so 42 is actually not bad. And what you see here, remember how I said whenever you see blue printing, that's an indication that you're looking at a live link to something? What that means is those 42 pages include samplings from all of the 5 pages in the book. It can also tell you the preview, even if not everything you'd want to read is included in the preview. It can also tell you if it's worth trying to track down the book one way or another. Hopefully things will open up soon, and hopefully there will be ways to track down these books. Also remember, LAPL does have ebooks. I checked, it doesn't have this book as an ebook, but it does have ebooks. So you definitely want to explore that. And then finally, even though I've gone over time, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface for you guys. There is so much more out there, and I've compiled some great resources to where to go for more information. Harvard Law School has a general criminal justice resources guide that includes information on criminal justice reform. The University of Akron Law School has this research guide that's basically geared for its law students who take the criminal justice reform seminar. It has wonderful resources for you. Howard University has a great research guide that includes links to books and articles and other stuff on social justice generally. While it's not specific to criminal justice reform, it has that in there. And also, I know that, you guys will be arguing impacts and stuff. It's got a lot of stuff you're going to need. And then finally, this resource, medium.com's a weird source. I wouldn't say cite it in a debate round, but what I thought was really cool is that it has this resource guide on prisons, policing, and punishment that quite literally is a list of literature on the topic with links. So that is what I wanted to share with you guys today. I hope you have a wonderful debate season. I am available for questions. And also, as I mentioned, if you don't get an opportunity to ask questions today, or you have follow-up questions, or if you need the full text of something that you've seen cited, I am available. Lambdal knows how to get in touch with me, and they'll share that information with your coaches. Thank you.
Awesome. So, personally, thank you. As a nerd at heart, I'm super excited to go and see all these links. You definitely put in a lot of work getting all those together, and it's really dense, but we've got all year to study it, so that's exciting. Cool. There was a couple of questions if you've got a few minutes to take them.
Sure. Should I, by the way, stop the share? I don't know what you're seeing on your end right now.
You're good. They just see you and me.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'll keep the share up then.
It's up to you. Yeah.
Oh, I'll stop the share. Great.
Actually, sorry. Yes.
Do you want me to resume share? Does that make things easier?
Yeah, if you could.
Sure.
While you do that, let me pull up where I had it written down. Oh, so there we go. Perfect. Thank you. One question was, I know that you recommended to cite law reviews over bar journals, but amongst law reviews, how do you know what's a good one?
That is a great question. I think the answer lies in who's authoring the article rather than what journal it's published in. There is a school of thought, and it's a fine school of thought, that says, if it is Harvard or Yale or Georgetown or UCLA, then it's more reliable than if it's a lesser ranked law school. There is something to be said for that. I also think that there's an element of snobbery to that. What I personally like to look at is who authored the article. Did a law professor author the article? And if so, you can look, where's that law professor teaching? What is their background in this subject? In addition to law professors, other experts write articles, judges write articles, people who practice in the field write articles. And I think all of those are fair game. I think the one thing you want to look out for is, is it law students writing articles? Sometimes it's obvious because it says it's a law student. Sometimes you realize the article was published in like 2018, and it says, the student began working for, a public defender's office in 2019, and you realize, wait a minute, they wrote this article when they were a student, because there's no way, So, and then when it comes to bar journals, I'd kind of say the same thing. I say this a lot these days because it's so easy for people to get content out there in the universe, but look to who's writing it. And that's kind of what you want to look at for reliability purposes. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I know even within debate, folks have embarrassed themselves in rounds cutting cards from undergraduate blog posts or even law school students, and you don't want to be in that situation in cross-ex where they start asking you those sites. It's not a fun time. It is for me as the judge, but not for you as the debater.
Oh yeah, no, and it's so easy to do. I mean, even in the, people think, oh, well, if it's from a book, but in this day and age, people self-publish books too. So, I definitely think a lot of the whole reliability goes back to who is writing it. Now, the more interesting debate, could be, is it better if a professor is writing something versus an experienced attorney who practices in that area?
Yeah.
That to me is a much more interesting debate, if you're trying to weigh evidence. Because I could see those arguments either way.
Yeah. No, those are the most exciting debates where the claims are all really valid, but then you gotta sort of look at where those ideas are coming from. The next question was about, I know earlier you were showing us some cool little hacks about getting around these paywalls. But just as a librarian, what's your opinion about these journals and things being behind paywalls, and who, if anybody, should pay for those articles?
That is definitely a bigger question than this presentation.
Yeah.
As a librarian, I think that as much should be publicly available as possible. I support the public access of information, but I also recognize that at some point the model has to change too. I think in this, and I think it is changing. I think I'm seeing wonderful things in public access journals. I'm also thinking universities that are really the folks who are doing the work are really putting pressure on publishers to make things public access. And I think that that's all wonderful. I also think as consumers of information, we have to appreciate that a public access journal is just as cool as a non-public access journal, because again, if we want to have the snobbery like I'm published in something that isn't available to the world, then that kind of is self-defeating, if you know what I mean. But I think we're definitely headed in the direction of public access, of more and more stuff. It's definitely something I support. But I don't know, my role in that bit is kind of small.
Yeah. Cool. Then the next one was a really short question. When you were talking about the BJS, the question was, what is a summary report?
Oh, you mean the Bureau of Justice Statistics?
Yeah.
It's hard for me. Well, I'll describe it, and if you want, I can screen share and we can look at it together. Sure. So when you look at the raw data, it is overwhelming, and you're just kind of assaulted by numbers. I say that as someone who's not a number person. What a summary report is it's anything from, frankly, a few paragraphs to a bulky report that distills the numbers down into something that's meaningful to somebody who is not a data scientist.
That definitely makes sense. So does that mean they also interpret the data and sort of do all that?
Yeah, I mean, Bureau of Justice Statistics tries to be pretty agnostic with respect to the data, but when the students really dig into reading law journal literature and other literature, they're likely to see citations to Bureau of Justice Statistics, BJS, to BJS data everywhere. It's that's the well that most people who write in this area go to for data. So, and that's also can be very helpful too, because if you want to see a data set, it'll be linked to in footnotes and things like that, or at least cited in a way that it's easy to get to. So yeah, the BJS summary reports, they will interpret it. But like I said, they try to be very agnostic in terms of how they use it. But then those are the data sources that most people who write in this field tend to go to.
That definitely makes sense. And then, some students had some questions. This is kind of going back to what we were talking about a minute ago. But students tend to struggle with comparing evidence and the credentials and things because just on face, it seems like everything's at some point credible. Do you think I know you were emphasizing that they should look at the author first, but when it comes to whether it was published in a blog or a journal, when you're comparing those things side by side, is there a sort of ranking or hierarchy there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely starts with the author. That being said, however, people tend to think, books go through the most editorial process, then journal articles go through an editorial process, then newspaper and magazine articles go through an editorial process, and blogs go through almost no editorial process. So that's kind of, you judge debate. I don't judge very often. So, that's kind of how I would kind of rank these sources of where information is pulling them from and with respect to who goes through an editorial process. Then again, But within that universe, you need to consider the fact that books can be self-published, and those go through very little editorial process and almost no outside editorial process. Meanwhile, professors and people who have a high level of experience in the field will blog. So I think that a blog post by someone who works in the field and or teaches in the field is going to, I would think, carry more weight than somebody who has a passing interest and self-published a book. So, and I think, yeah, in this era where information is a bit of a free-for-all, it becomes that much more important to really consider who's writing the materials. I'm kind of, I talk about that a lot when I talk about information literacy is, know who your authors are.
Awesome.
Does that make sense?
Definitely. And then the last question was mostly about how the databases work. So you showed us a lot of different resources.
Yeah.
How do you know which one's the right one for what you're looking for, or is there like a preference, or how do we know what they're for?
It's really is it's a lot of trial and error. I know one thing, LAPL and LA Unified, both when you go to the databases, they give like these short, brief descriptions of each database. And I definitely, when you're trying to figure out where to go, or you're like, the databases that I saw in that presentation aren't helping. Is anything else going to be good here? Explore those descriptions, because you're likely to find, additional great materials. ProQuest and EBSCO are kind of just the two ginormous operators of these databases. They both have lots and lots of databases under their various umbrellas that do a lot of things. So it's just kind of known that ProQuest and EBSCO are good places to go if you kind of want to do those search across different types of resources, and then you can filter by news or academic writing. Meanwhile, Hein Online is really kind of sets the standard for pulling law review articles. So if you're like, I just want law review literature, just use Hein Online. And then Google Scholar it draws from a lot of different places. For better or for worse, it puts that Google algorithm on everything. For better, I think Google Scholar is a great supplement to subscription resources. But the problem is it's really hard to craft a finely tuned search in Google Scholar, because you don't have the options of saying, limit my search to keywords, or limit my search to when this word, appears in the same sentence as this other word. So Google Scholar is an incredible supplement to using the subscription databases, but I don't think it's a replacement for that.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that when I've been trying to do some research and just sort of like, I couldn't always put it into words. I think you put it beautifully. That just like the different databases feel different to me when I'm like searching for them, and just like through practice, you just sort of get a feel which ones you prefer.
Yeah, I mean, research really is more art than science, and it's a lot of trial and error. And I definitely, I think the research that you do for debate it gives you a lot more patience with the research process than what I see from a lot of law students. So, I've had a few law students who I've gotten to teach who have debate backgrounds, and they're next level, man. So, which is why I say, anyone who's interested in law, let's
I'm
talk.
sure there's plenty of us.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely be following up with that. But personally, thank you so much for preparing all this presentation. I know that if I was debating right now, I'd be jumping straight into all of those links, and I might end up throwing away an app that I already put together, not knowing all these other resources that are at my hands and fingertips. So thank you so much.
Well, it's a big debate topic, but I think there are a lot of great research resources out there, and I just hope that everybody does have fun researching, because there is fun to be had.
Yeah, the potential on both sides of this is just so endless, and you could have a different app at every tournament and still not run out of topics. So
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks for giving us some direction and just sort of highlighting the breadth of it all. And I'm excited for the season. And thank you for guiding us down that way.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And again, thank you so much for having me be a part of this lecture series. And thank you for setting it up and all your hard work.
Awesome. All right, folks.
Happy debating.
Thank you, folks, for tuning in. Couple of quick announcements for this week. One, later tonight, coaches will receive the novice and JV evidence packs. So you get to see what we'll be doing with that. You'll get to put to use some of the things Jody was talking about with the state's counterplan and some of the other affirmatives like body-worn cameras and things like that. So be on the lookout for that and reach out to your coaches. Also, make sure you check out the tournament schedule so you know when the tournaments are coming up this season. Aside from that, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you have a good night.